So 250 years ago, right now, the revolution was well underway. The American Revolution had been started. The Continental Congress was meeting in this building, Independence Hall. And one thing I've been doing every day is just checking letters that the Founding Fathers wrote back and forth to each other. So I figured I'd check today and see if I find anything interesting and share it with you. I've got my laptop right here. So I'm gonna be looking down and checking for letters. Let's begin with Washington's weather report. He wrote in his diary on the 19th of June, 1775, very warm in the forenoon, but cooler much afterwards. Winds shifting northerly. Now, looking through the letters here, we have a lot of ground to cover. There are 10 letters. So let's look through them real quick and see what we want to focus on today. There's a letter from John Adams to George Washington. In compliance with your request, I have considered what you proposed and am obliged to give. And then to George Washington from John Adams. In compliance with your request, I have considered what you proposed. That looks like the same letter. I think that's just the same letter. Okay, next. John Adams. To John Adams from Joseph Palmer. I thank you for several favors, the last of which on the 10th instant I just now received. Okay. We'll definitely click into that. Benjamin Franklin from Jonathan Williams, Sr. Yale Library hearing that you was arrived in America, and I being much concerned. Interesting. Well, maybe we'll check that one out. Okay, there's Washington's diary entry. Commission from the Continental Congress. In Congress, the delegates of the United Colonies of New Hampshire, Massachusetts Bay, and so on. Oh, we're definitely reading that one. From George Washington to Burwell Bassett. I am now embarked on a tempestuous ocean from whence perhaps no friendly harbor is to be found. Wow. Okay, we'll read that one too. From George Washington to John Parke Custis. I have been called upon by the unanimous voice of the colonies to take command of the army. From James Madison to William Bradford. I received another acceptable pledge of your friendship 2 days ago in a letter dated June 2nd. Well, it seems to me it best to start with the official documents. So let's start with the commission to the from the Continental Congress. Commission from the Continental Congress. Okay, Philadelphia, 19th of June, 1775. The delegates of the United Colonies of New Hampshire, Massachusetts Bay, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Newcastle, Kent, and Sussex on Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and South Carolina. To George Washington, Esquire. We, reposing especial trust and confidence in your patriotism, conduct, and fidelity, do by these presents constitute and appoint you to be General and Commander-in-Chief of the Army of the United Colonies and of all the forces raised, or to be raised by them, and of all others who shall voluntarily offer their service and join the said army for the defense of American liberty and for repelling every hostile invasion thereof. And you are hereby vested with full power and authority to act as you shall think for the good and welfare of the service. And we do hereby strictly charge and require all officers and soldiers under your command to be obedient to your orders and diligent to the exercise of their several duties. And we do also enjoin and require you to be careful in executing the great trust reposed in you by causing strict discipline and order to be observed in the army, and that the soldiers are duly exercised and provided with all convenient necessaries. And you are to regulate your conduct in every respect by the rules and discipline of war, as herewith given you, and punctually to observe and follow such orders and directions from time to time as you shall receive from this or future Congress of the said United Colonies, or a committee of Congress for that purpose appointed. This commission to continue in force until revoked by this or a future Congress. By order of the Congress, John Hancock, President. Okay, let's read this footnote. It's interesting. George Washington's commission was drafted by a committee of 3 delegates, Richard Henry Lee, Edward Rutledge, and John Adams, who were appointed for that purpose on 16th of June, immediately after George Washington's speech accepting the command of the Continental forces. They reported to Congress the next day, at which time the commission, being read by paragraphs and debated, was agreed to. Congress then ordered it to be fairly transcribed, to be signed by the President and attested by the Secretary, and delivered to the General. On the 18th of June, Hancock wrote to Joseph Warren, "The Congress have appointed George Washington, Esquire, General and Commander-in-Chief of the Continental Army. His commission is made out, and I shall sign it tomorrow." When Hancock signed the commission, he apparently changed the date by writing 19 over the 17 written by Matlock. Okay, so let's go back, and I guess next let's read what Washington had to say to Burwell Bassett. To Burwell Bassett. Dear Sir, I am now embarked on a tempestuous ocean from whence perhaps no friendly harbor is to be found. I have been called upon by the unanimous voices of the colonies to the command of the Continental Army. It is an honor I by no means aspired to. It is an honor I wish to avoid, as well from an unwillingness to quit the peaceful enjoyment of my family, as from a thorough conviction of my own incapacity and want of experience in the conduct of so momentous a concern. But the partiality of the Congress added to some political motives left me without a choice. May God grant, therefore, that my acceptance of it may be attended with some good to the common cause, and without injury, from want of knowledge, to my own reputation. I can answer but for 3 things: a firm belief of the justice of our cause, close attention in the prosecution of it, and the strictest integrity. If these cannot supply the places of ability and experience, the cause will suffer, and more than probable my character along with it, as reputation derives in principal support from success. But it will be remembered, I hope, that no desire or insinuation of mine placed me in this situation. I shall not be deprived, therefore, of a comfort in the worst event if I retain a consciousness of having acted to the best of my judgment. I am at liberty to tell you that the Congress in committee, which will, I dare say, be agreed to when reported, have consented to a continental currency, and have ordered $2 million to be struck for payment of the troops and other expenses arising from our defense, as also that 15,000 men are voted as a Continental Army, which will, I dare say, be augmented as more troops are embarking for America than was expected at the time of passing that vote. As to other articles of intelligence, I must refer you to the gazettes, as the printers pick up everything that is stirring in that way. The other officers in the higher departments are not yet fixed, therefore I cannot give you their names. I set out tomorrow for Boston, where I shall always be glad to hear from you. My best wishes attend Mrs. Bassett, Mrs. Dandridge, and all of our relations and friends in great haste. As I have many letters to write and other business to do, I remain with the sincerest regard, Dr. Sir, your most obedient and affectionate humble servant, George Washington. P.S. I must entreat you and Mrs. Bassett, if possible, to visit at Mount Vernon, as also my wife's other friends. I could wish you to take her down, as I have no expectations of returning till winter, and feel great uneasiness at her lonesome situation. I have sent chariot and horses back. Okay, here are some footnotes. Burwell Bassett, 1734 to 1793, was married to Martha Washington's sister, Anna Maria Dandridge Bassett. The Bassetts, 1739 to 1777. The Bassetts lived at Elmham in New Kent Country, Virginia, where George Washington and Mrs. Washington visited often during the 1760s and early 1770s, usually in conjunction with their trips to Williamsburg, some 20 miles southeast of Elmham. Burwell Bassett represented his county in the Virginia House of Burgesses from 1762 to 1775, and in the first four Virginia conventions between 1774 and 1776. Okay. So this is a footnote to where Washington said, which I dare say be augmented as more troops are embarking for America than was expected at the time of passing that vote. During this whole period, the Continental Congress met on most days as a committee of the whole. No official records were kept of those meetings, but the letters of some of the delegates indicate that it was roughly 14th of June when the Committee of the Whole approved a Continental Army of 15,000 men, 10,000 in Massachusetts and 5,000 in New York, and the following day when it voted to issue up to $2 million in bills of credit for the defense of America. Virginia delegate to unknown, blah, blah, blah. The currency resolution was reported to the floor of Congress on 22nd of June and was formally approved with little or no change. The other resolution, however, did not reach the floor. Reports of the arrival of British reinforcements at Boston and the difficulty of determining the exact size of the enemy's force apparently persuaded the delegates to empower George Washington to set the Continental Army's strength at an appropriate level, not exceeding double that of the enemy. See the second instruction in Instructions from the Continental Congress, 22nd of June, 1775. The injunction to keep the proceedings of Congress secret was specifically lifted with regard to its decisions on the Army, the currency, and George Washington's appointment as Commander-in-Chief, so that the delegates could write home about these important matters. This news was not supposed to appear in the newspapers, however. Okay, interesting. So George Washington is beginning to form, the army is beginning to form. Which one shall we read next? Maybe let's do another George Washington, to John Parke Custis. All right, this one is from George Washington to John Parke Custis on 19th of June, 1775. Dear Jack, I have been called upon by the unanimous voice of the colonies to take the command of the Continental Army. It is an honor I neither sought after or was by any means fond of accepting, from a consciousness of my own inexperience and inability to discharge the duties of so important a trust. However, as the partiality of the Congress have placed me in this distinguished point of view, I can make them no other return but what will flow from close attention and an upright intention. For the rest, I can say nothing. My great concern upon this occasion is the thoughts of leaving your mother under the uneasiness which I know this affair will throw her into. I therefore hope, expect, and indeed have no doubt of your using every means in your power to keep up her spirits, by doing everything in your power to promote her quiet. I have, I must confess, very uneasy feelings on her account, but as it has been a kind of unavoidable necessity which has led me into this appointment, I shall more readily hope that success will attend it, and crown our meetings with happiness. At any time, I hope it is unnecessary for me to say that I am always pleased with yours and Nellie's abidance at Mount Vernon, much less upon this occasion, when I think it absolutely necessary for the peace and satisfaction of your mother, a consideration which I have no doubt will have due weight with you both, and require no arguments to enforce. As the public gazettes will convey every article of intelligence that I could communicate in this letter, I shall not repeat them, but with love to Nellie and sincere regard for yourself, I remain your most affectionate, George Washington. P.S. Since writing the foregoing, I have received your letter of the 5th instant. I am obliged to you for the intelligence therein contained, and am glad you directed about the tobacco, for I had really forgot it. You must now take upon yourself the entire management of your own estate. It will no longer be in my power to assist you, nor is there any occasion for it, as you have never discovered a disposition to put it to a bad use. The Congress, for I am at liberty to say as much, are about to strike $2 million as a continental currency for the support of the war as Great Britain seems determined to force us into, and there will be at least 15,000 raised as a continental army. As I am exceedingly hurried, I can add no more at present than that I am and company George Washington. Here are some interesting footnotes. John Parke Custis, called Jack or Jackie by his relatives and friends, was Martha Washington's son by her first marriage and principal heir to the large Custis estate. George Washington became Jack's guardian and administrator of the Custis estate shortly after he married Martha Washington in January 1759. Okay. John Parke Custis married Eleanor Nellie Calvert in February 1774. For 2 or 3 years after their marriage, the young couple apparently lived alternately at Mount Vernon and Mount Airy, the home of Nellie's parents in Prince George's County, Maryland. John Parke Custis's letter of 15th June 1775 has not been found. The tobacco mentioned was probably grown on the Custis lands on the Pamunkey and York Rivers and on the eastern shore of Virginia. Arrangements had to be made each year for shipping the Custis crop to England to be sold. Jack, who did not reach the age of 21 until November of this year, apparently did assume immediate responsibility for running his plantations, but final settlement of George Washington's guardianship accounts and the transfer of Jack's bonds was not made until the following year. Jack proved to be a poor businessman. By the time of his death, at the age of 27, the value of the Custis estate was much diminished, and its affairs were in great disorder. Okay, let's back out from this letter. So we've done the commission, 2 letters from George Washington. Now, one of them mentioned Boston, so let's see what James Madison to William Bradford is about. From James Madison to William Bradford. Dear friend, I received another acceptable pledge of your friendship 2 days ago in the letter dated June 2nd, and as usual must begin by discharging a debt of gratitude, to which the further accounts I have of your friendly services and intentions entitle you. I hope I have an inexhaustible fund of that, however destitute I may be of other virtues. But I assure you I am often grieved at reflecting that I have it not in my power to give you a better evidence of it than verbal declarations. Yet I have that opinion of your goodness that I am persuaded you would be satisfied even without them. Little did I ever expect to hear that Jeremiah's doctrine that the heart of man is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked was exemplified in the celebrated Dr. Franklin, and if the suspicions against him be well founded, it certainly is remarkably exemplified. Indeed, it appears to me that the bare suspicion of his guilt amounts very nearly to a proof of its reality. If he were the man he formerly was, and has even of late pretended to be, in his conduct in Philadelphia, on this critical occasion could have left no room for surmise or distrust. He certainly would have been both a faithful informer and active member of the Congress. His behavior would have been explicit and his zeal warm and conspicuous. We have to report here that Bland, one of our delegates, has returned traitor and fled from Philadelphia. I hope it is not true, though some unfavorable hints have been thrown out of late to his prejudice. Virgil certainly gave a great proof of his knowledge of human nature when he exclaimed, "Quid non mortalia pectora cogis aurea sacra fama?" Though appointed a member of Congress, Bland is in needy circumstances, and we all know age is no stranger to avarice. The conduct of these 2 delegates, with many concurring circumstances, I think suggests the apprehensions that some golden prospects will be opened to the Congress by the ministry before they make their ultimate appeal to the sword. A prospect that could captivate the heart of a Franklin, could almost make me shudder for the tempted. But when I consider the united virtue of that illustrious body, every apprehension of danger vanishes. The signal proofs they have given of their integrity and attachment to liberty, both in their private and confederate capacities, must triumph over jealousy itself. However, should it come to the worst, I am persuaded that the Union virtue and love of liberty, at present prevailing throughout the colonies, is such that it would be as little in the power of our treacherous friends as of our avowed enemies to put the yoke upon us. An attempt to sell us would infallibly purchase to the author's present vengeance and eternal infamy. A rumor is on the wing that the provincials have stormed Boston, and with the loss of 7,000 have cut off or taken Gage and all his men, but it is but little credited. Indeed, the fact is extremely improbable, but the times are so remarkable for strange events that improbability is almost become an argument for the truth. Our friend Mr. Wallace, I hear, is well, and has entered into the connubial state with one Miss McDowell, daughter of one of the representatives of Botetourt County. Since I wrote last, a dysentery hath made an eruption in my father's family, It has carried off a little sister about 7 and a brother about 4 years' age. It is still among us, but principally among the blacks. I have escaped hitherto, and as it is now out of the house I live in, I hope the danger is over. It is a disorder, pretty incident to this county, and from some symptoms I am afraid will rage more generally this year than common. Our burgesses from the county are not yet returned from Williamsburg, where they hold their assembly. So I cannot give you any particulars of their proceedings. The newspapers will do that, I expect. I understand Lord Dunmore, by deserting his palace and taking sanctuary on board the ship of war, under pretense of the fear of an attack on his person, has surprised and incensed them much, as they thought it incredible he should be actuated on that occasion by the motive he alleges. It is judged more likely to have proceeded from some intelligence or instructions he has received from his friends or superiors to the north. It is said the governor of North Carolina, North Carolina has treated his assembly nearly in the same manner. Some will have it that Lord Dunmore removed from Williamsburg and pretended danger that he might with more force and consistency misrepresent us to the ministry. His unparalleled malice to the people of this colony, since the detection of his false and wicked letters, sent home at the time he was professing an ardent friendship for us, must lead us to suppose he will do us all the injury in his power. But we defy his power as much as we detest his villainy. We have as great unanimity and as much the military ardor as you can possibly have in your government. And the progress we make in discipline and hostile preparations is as great as the zeal with which these things are undertaken. The strength of this colony will lie chiefly in the riflemen of the upland counties, of whom we shall have great numbers. You would be astonished at the perfection this art is brought to. The most inexpert hands reckon it an indifferent shot to miss the bigness of a man's face at the distance of 100 yards. I am far from being among the best, and should not often miss it on a fair trial at that distance. If we come into an engagement, I make no doubt but the officers of the enemy will fall at the distance before they get within 150 or 200 yards. Indeed, I believe we have men that would very often hit such a mark at 250 yards. Our greatest apprehensions proceed from the scarcity of powder, but a little will go a great way with such as use rifles. It is imagined our governor has been tampering with the slaves, and that he has it in contemplation to make great use of them in case of a civil war in this province. To say the truth, that it is only part in which this colony is vulnerable. And if we should be subdued, we shall fall like Achilles by the hand of one that knows that secret. But we have a good cause and great courage, which are a great support. I shall add that among other encouragement, we have a prospect of immense crops of grain. Adieu. Well, that was interesting. Bit of gossip. Let's check into these two letters from John Adams to George Washington. I think they're the same letter. So let's see what they're writing about. In compliance from John Adams to George Washington. In compliance with your request, I have considered of what you proposed and am obliged to give you my sentiments very briefly and in haste. In general, sir, there will be 3 committees, either of a Congress or of an House of Representatives, which are and will be composed of our best men, such whose judgment and integrity may be most relied on. I mean the Committee on the State of the Province and Committee of Safety and the Committee of Supplies. But lest this should be too general, I beg leave to mention particularly James Warren Esquire of Plymouth, Joseph Hawley of Northampton. Okay, I see. So he's suggesting people. Yeah, so I won't read all of these names. Okay, so I scrolled through it. If you're interested, you can read through these letters yourself and see the names for yourself. Okay, next, let's read to John Adams from Joseph Palmer. My dear friend. This is from Cambridge. So up in Boston. My dear friend, I thank you for your several favors, the last of which, the 10th instant, I just now received. I have not had time to write, and through abundant business, my health has sometimes been reduced. I now write in Committee of Safety, a few lines at a time as I can. All the business in this committee has been done by only 6 or 7 members, upon whom it has fallen very heavy, public business having pressed upon us very hard. To see the distress occasioned by the late measures of administration is enough to melt a heart of adamant. Carts are continually passing in every direction from the sea coast, loaded with beds, chairs, pots, kettles, and 1,000 other things, I guess, with women and children in the midst. Great part of the sea coast is thinned of inhabitants, and most people have removed their most valuable effects. Mr. Church's family and mine are yet at Verchild's house. They visit Germantown now and then. I have been with my family only 2 nights since the 20th of March. You received from Congress the particulars of the Battle of Lexington, since which the affair of Noddle's Island and several other smaller skirmishes has taken place, in all which we had greatly the advantage, accounts of which you have doubtless received. But on Saturday last, the 17th, the regulars attacked us upon one of the Charlestown Hills, where we had begun to entrench, and obliged us to retreat by means of their ships and floating batteries, we having no large cannon to match theirs. The cannon we could have had, if we had gunpowder enough to spare, but we had not more than sufficient for the field pieces and musketry. However, the enemy have not much to boast, for though they kept the field and took from us 4 or 5 pieces, 3 pounders, yet they lost, by the best accounts we can yet obtain, about 500 killed and wounded, and among the former are, as we have reason to believe, several officers of distinction. Our loss in numbers is not great. By the best accounts we have yet about 60 or 70 killed and missing. But among these is, what shall I say? How shall I write the name of our worthy friend, the great and good Dr. W. You will hear by others who will write tomorrow such particulars as I have not possessed of. Soon after the regulars landed, they set fire to the town of Charleston, and that day, yesterday, and this day, they have consumed most of the houses as far as Penny Ferry, and they have possession of all that part of Charlestown, and are encamped upon Bunker's Hill. And we are encamped upon Prospect Hill, Winter's Hill, and at the bridge leading to Inman's, Phipps and Company. Yesterday and this day they have cannoned us, but to no purpose, and our people, by small parties, have picked off some of their outguards. We expect another action very soon. Do send us powder, and then we shall, by the blessing of heaven, soon destroy this hornet's nest. This put me in mind of saltpeter. J. Greenleaf, Esquire, the masters John Peck and William Frobisher are now, by encouragement from Congress, gone to Brookfield, upon Colonel Foster's estate, where is supposed to be a very large bed of fine earth, such as is described to be in the East Indies, strongly impregnated with nitre. The like is discovered in several other places. I must beg you to send the best process of making it. Adieu, my dear friend, and assure Masters Hancock, Adams, Payne, and Company that I should be glad to hear often how, what, and all about the political world in which I am deeply engaged, and that I remain your and their sincere friend and humble servant, J. Palmer. And then here's the recipe for, this looks like a recipe for saltpeter. Okay. Earth dug up from under a stable, put into a tub as ashes for lye, filled with water. Stand 24 hours, then leaked off slowly, then boiled for 1 hour, then run through another tub full of ashes, i.e. filtrated through the ashes a small quantity, not to stand, then put into a kettle and boiled until it grows yellow. Then drop it on a cold stone or cold iron, and it will crystallize for a proof. Then set it by in trays in cool places, then it will crystallize, and the saltpeter is formed. Okay, let's read some footnotes here. Probably a reference to General Gage's having yielded to pressure and modified the agreement he had reached with the Provincial Congress regarding those wishing to leave Boston. At first, those leaving were forbidden to take out any arms or ammunition. Thus, provisions and merchandise were added to the list. Finally, arbitrary searches were made of all containers, and sometimes passports were so drawn as to separate families. A skirmish took place on the 27th and 28th of May, when Americans sought to remove livestock from Noddle's and Hog Islands in Boston Harbor. The British tried to prevent the removal, and in the fighting, the British lost a schooner and had a sloop badly damaged. Reputedly, the British suffered far more casualties than the Americans. Israel Putnam conducted himself so well as commander that presumably the Continental Congress was the more ready to name him a general. Okay. The town was set afire by artillery rounds. Which town? Let's see. That would be Penny Ferry. The town of Penny Ferry was set afire by artillery rounds and by Marines. The wooden houses and other buildings burned furiously, the flames driven by an east wind. The Penny Ferry, a link between the town and Boston, was at the site of the old Charles River Bridge. A full and meticulous account of the fire and the extent of its damage, including individual claims of losses, is reconstructed from contemporary sources in this book. Okay. Neither the source of this recipe nor the date on which it was written is known. It may have been intended for Palmer, since he asked for such instructions, but it is not known whether it was ever sent to him. It may have been included in the enclosure not found, sent to James Warren in John Adams' letter of 27th of June below. On the 10th of June, the Continental Congress had appointed a committee to devise ways and means to introduce the manufacture of saltpeter in these colonies. A description of the process had been published in the Pennsylvania Gazette of 25th of January. Okay, let's go back and read the last letter for today. It is to Benjamin Franklin from Jonathan Williams, Sr. from Worcester. Worcester is up in Boston, or outside of Boston. It's a town outside of Boston. Honored Sir, hearing that you was arrived in America, and I being much concerned for our beloved son, this is to desire you to give us some account of his situation and circumstances. Poor fellow, I fear he is now undone as a merchant. We, relying on the faith of General Gage, packed up all his goods in order to remove them out of Boston, but was forbid by him, out of whose mouth proceeds blessing and cursing. They there remain with all my estate, which was indeed sufficient for me and all my family, though a few days before I left that once happy town, which has now become a den of thieves and robbers, to complete ruin my stores, with all my papers, and some of my books were consumed by fire. I was obliged to leave all except a few trunk of clothes and house linen, my son's goods, 9 houses, one of which I valued at 15,000 sterling, and all its valuable furniture. But blessed be God, I have now collected my scattered family, who are all here in this town, in comfortable circumstances at present, and rather than they should want, I will go to day labor. Though old, I have good health. 56 this day. My greatest concern is to pay my debts, though I have got my plate, but that must, if we tarry long in this state, go to the support of my family. My debts that are due to me does not follow me, and was I to follow them, I doubt whither I should catch them, nor could I, as the old saying is, make one hand wash the other, though the former is 5 times more than the latter. However, I doubt not we shall get through the wilderness, and on those accounts perhaps sooner arrive to the promised land. My Aunt Meckham accepted an invitation from Mr. Green, and is well there a few days ago, and happy for everyone is so that thinks themselves so. My wife and children joins in dutiful respects with your nephew and humble servant, J. Williams. Please to direct to Worcester, which lays in the post road. Your being in the Congress will give you a better knowledge of our public state than I can write. From the passage about good and evil, let's read this footnote. From the passage about good and evil in man's tongue, James 3:10. After Lexington, thousands of Bostonians left town. Gage was anxious to be rid of them, and negotiated with the select men and town meeting the terms of evacuation. The agreement was that those who wished might, upon depositing their firearms with the select men, receive passes to leave with their families and effects. The Provincial Congress arranged for their settlement and for the passage of loyalists into town. Difficulties arose at once, however, and the crux of them was the interpretation of effects. Gage feared that Boston, once all the rebels' movable property was out of it, might be set afire. He interpreted effects to exclude first merchandise, then provisions and medical supplies, both of which were in short supply within his lines. The provincial Congress thereupon limited what the Loyalists might carry in, clothing and household furniture. Resentment escalated, and Gage's conduct became a grievance that Congress included in its declaration of reasons for taking up arms. Okay. They obviously included his wife, Grace Harris Williams, and no doubt some of their sons and daughters. The first 8 in order of birth appear in Report of the Record Commissioners of the City of Boston, 1894. Well, there you have it, folks. There were many letters today. Thanks for coming along and reading them with me. It's very special to read the commission for George Washington to lead the army, as well as accounts from Boston after the several skirmishes following Lexington and Concord. If you like this, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.